Congratulations on Shelby Oaks. I had the chance to see it a few weeks back and just had an absolute blast with it.
Thank you so much, Mike. That's awesome to hear, man. Thank you.
I wanted to talk about the different formats used in the film as it goes between found footage, this kind of true crime documentary, and then more of the narrative feature. I was curious if blending these different formats was always the intention, or if there was ever a draft where it was always found footage or always one thing over the other.
I think the first initial idea, like literally before it was even a treatment, was let my wife and I talked about just using our savings to make a found footage movie and upload it to YouTube because, we were just really tired of waiting
Hmm.
to make movies. I was in a space where I was feeling kind of depressed that I wasn't making movies, and I was making less short films. I was making less sketches. I was doing just more straight up videos. And I just felt this creative urge just kind of gnawing away at me. And so that first initial idea was just like, let's just use like literally $20,000 and make a found footage movie and put it on YouTube. But as we kept writing, the ideas kept getting bigger, and then it did start to become what it is. And because I do think it's fun, for me, like when I watch a true crime documentary on Netflix or wherever, or a faux documentary like a Lake Mungo or a Noroi, I've always thought to myself, it'd be cool to have mixed media formats telling this story too, not just the one sort of straightforward way we see them, because we live in a world of mixed media. That's how we get all of our information now from so many different outlets and so many different formats. We watch all different types of things and we read things, and there's no one way that we sort of all get our stories and our information. And I like the idea of an indie horror film taking that approach too.
Films about these paranormal investigator YouTubers who go missing. Are there any paranormal investigation YouTube channels? Or are you just a fan of like ghost hunting TV shows that kind of helped inspire that aspect of the film?
Yeah, definitely. So I remember as a kid, I unfortunately can't remember the show title, but there was this one show that I think it was, okay, I'm going to mess up his last name. His first name is Zach, but he's a really famous ghost hunter guy.
Hmm.
Um, and he would go to places, and he was such a good host and such a good performer that the way he would talk about like the backstory of a haunted place or whatever would be like almost scarier than whatever they were going to shoot. He had such a good way of setting it up, and I became interested in that sort of like more professional side. But then I did discover a lot of urban explorers on YouTube who would just like go to abandoned shopping malls, and I think the first one I ever saw was somebody found an abandoned Blockbuster that had a lot of stuff still in it, and it was strange because most of those like abandoned rental stores, they take all of their product, all of their supply, and it's just like an empty husk of a building. But this one had all this stuff. And my first thought was not only how creepy and cool that was, but how great the production value was. And it was all just there, and it looked amazing. And none of that had to be paid for. And so then I kind of started thinking about abandoned locations and ghost towns, and how maybe an indie movie could be set in a ghost town, and how there's a lot of abandoned places in Ohio where I live and where we shot the movie that could create the ghost town, and we didn't have to spend a lot of money to do that. And the ideas just kind of kept flowing after that.
So is that kind of where the carnival set piece was that just there, or did you have to like place that out in the film?
That's there. No,
Okay.
that's a real abandoned amusement park. It used to be called Chippewa Lake Amusement Park in Ohio. My mom really did go there when she was a little girl. And there's a Ferris wheel, there's a roller coaster, there's teacup rides just sitting in the woods since 1978. And I wrote the script around those locations. The risk being, if I can't get in, we're kind of screwed because this is like a big scene that has to have this.
Yeah.
But gratefully, all the places did say yes.
You mentioned Lake Mungo. I'm sure there are many horror movies that helped inspire Shelby Oaks. I'm curious, just with your digital background, were there any creepy pastas that helped inspire Shelby Oaks, like SCP Foundation, anything of that nature, or any creepy pastas you're just a fan of?
Oh, yeah, no, I love that whole. So here's this is a great question because like for me, one of the things that I wanted to explore in this movie is the mid to late aughts online, and how we were kind of all discovering that the internet could tell us horror stories too. Because in like the late 90s to the early 2000s, when the internet was very much in its infancy, there wasn't a lot of that out there. Like I would go online, I'd maybe build like a GeoCities website or something. I would look up movie showtimes. Not a lot of, social media wasn't around, and so as soon as there was this time period though, like when YouTube started and when some of those first ever like jump scare videos were introduced, like the relaxing driving one where it's like a car driving and for a minute and at the very end like a zombie pops up. Um, Suddenly the internet felt like it could scare you. And it was a tool also for telling horror stories and creepy pastas and things like Slender Man and stuff like were introduced, Cartoon Cat and all these things. Um, and so I also think that YouTube played a part in that because in those early years of YouTube, people were not creating videos because they wanted to make money or because they wanted, to be seen. Nobody really knew what YouTube was back then. It was just a lot of people who were discovering themselves. And if there was any type of paranormal video on YouTube, there was often a lot of uh, discussion about it because people weren't doing AI and everybody wasn't a VFX expert. And so, like, if you saw something strange on YouTube, there was this sensation of like, is that real? And so I really like the idea of entering that space of the mid aughts to late aughts in the YouTube space through the eyes of a paranormal investigating team and what the public might have thought of the types of things they were making.
And it does feel like Shelby Oaks is a continuation of that, the communal nature of creating horror, just with the Kickstarter campaign and like everyone contributing to help make this horror story a reality.
Definitely. No, I mean, I'm so grateful for all the people who've supported this movie and allowed us to make a weird indie movie for not a lot of money and actually ended up getting it on theater screens.
You have Mike Flanagan aboard as executive producer. What do you think was the most important thing, or just something you wouldn't have maybe thought of otherwise while making the movie by having Flanagan in your corner?
Honestly, he's the type of filmmaker who is very aware of not stepping on someone's toes and that he never tries to impose his vision or himself upon. He never tried to do that to me. He was never like, you have to do this. He was always very much so supportive of my vision, but also offered amazing advice in the editing room and coming into like just like little micro cuts and things that maybe don't have to be there. The hardest thing for me, I think for a lot of filmmakers too, is you shoot something, you're there on the day, you know how hard it was to get a shot and you love how it turned out, and you're like, there's no way this is not going to be in the movie because we worked so hard to get this part. And then when you watch it with somebody else who wasn't there, who doesn't know that, they can look, and Mike would routinely do that. He'd be like, I don't think you need that shot. And I'm like, Mike, that was, that's one of my babies, man. And he'd be like, I don't think you need it. And then I would often, I would sit back and I'd think, and then we'd look at the scene without it, and I'd be like, oh my God, he's right. And so, yeah, he really did teach me to kill your darlings. That there are things that you may love that you may have known for a fact would be in your movie, but they don't necessarily have to be.
Have some great creature designs in Shelby Oaks with the demon and the hellhounds. And I know you have a Carlos Monte aboard in the art department who worked on Dune and Arrival. Were there any alternate designs or alternate creatures you thought about putting in there?
Yes, no, I have a whole notebook uh, that I filled with weird sketches and creepy images and strange drawings and stuff that I shared with him, and then also a huge folder of just like hundreds of images from online of things that creeped me out or that felt like they were the vibe. And I gave all that to him, and I had like a 3 hour conversation with him, Carlos, and got really in depth about like the myth of this thing and how this thing perhaps sees itself and all of that. And then he would give me sketches too. And the first few sketches were great, of course. So Carlos will never draw anything that isn't great, but it was just whether or not it was right for the story. And So it went through a few different iterations over the course of a few weeks, but we landed on something that we all really liked, but that was also practical and doable from our budget. And then it came to Jason Hamer to actually build the suit. And we have Derek Mears, a 6'8" legend who was Jason from Friday the 13th and Swamp Thing. And he is an alien in Signs as well. He's the alien on the roof that Mel Gibson sees out the window. So it was really cool to work with him. And Jason Hamer, who made the suit, is incredible. I mean, he just wrapped The Odyssey with Nolan. He's and every time he would get on Zoom with me, he would be in his studio and I could see behind him like all of his creatures and suits and all these legendary things he's made. And I was just like, I cannot believe I'm talking to you for this.
I'm sure you have a ton of other ideas for movies to do in the future. Are there any other like horror subgenres you'd be interested in exploring, or is there a possibility we'll get a Chris Stuckman romantic comedy at some point?
I love rom-coms. I do. I love all of them. I watch rom-coms all the time. I just did the other day. I wouldn't say no, of course. The reason horror is so great and is my favorite genre is like you said, the subgenres feel kind of endless. It feels like there's such an amazing playing field for filmmakers to do whatever they want and kind of show off all different types of skills in all different types of ways. Um, I I would love to make an action film one day. I think that would be something I'd really like to do. Um, I do have a script that is an action film that I'm pitching right now that's not like a typical action movie. It feels like it has its kind of blood in some of like the nonstop thrillers of the 90s that really excite me and that I miss that we don't see as much anymore. And I'm hoping to be able to do that, but we'll see what happens. I'm not, I'm genre agnostic. I'll play around anywhere.
So great talking with you today. And as someone who also posts reviews to social media and hopes to make my own movies one day, it's been real inspirational to follow your journey and to see Shelby Oaks finally coming on to theaters October 24th.
Thank you so much, Mike, man. That's really great to hear. And good luck with everything.